Nobody's listening, right? Hi, Andy. I'm asking you just as you take a sip of water. It's
Hello.
just like old times.
I don't remember that. Was that a thing I used to do?
I feel like, yes. What are we doing?
We're back.
I guess we're back. I should explain what the fuck is going on.
Or not.
Or not. You and I both have podcast or podcast adjacent projects that we're going to bring to light later this year.
Very true.
And I, in preparation for my project, was going back to listen to Totally Marrieds. And it feels gross to say, but I delighted in how much fun we had.
I think more importantly, you realized how much better our marriage was when we talked to each other once a week. Let's be honest.
Yeah, well, it was a time once a week where we didn't have phones on, even though mine is on right now because I'm looking for a work situation. We didn't necessarily talk about the kids or like, are we replacing our fence or, all the house stuff. We were talking about things that we found interesting throughout the week that we wanted to discuss with each other.
Yeah.
There's a lot of laughter. Some arguments. I will not. One of the episodes I listened to, we got into an argument, but we worked through it.
I can remember many times stopping the podcast and then getting in an even bigger fight because you were so angry at something I said on the podcast. So I'm looking forward to that if we're doing more of that. But I don't even know if we're doing more of that yet. We're just here right now. We felt the need to get back on the saddle is what we felt.
And we're not expecting a soul to listen to this.
In fact, we're not sure if anybody's actually listening.
We're not promoting it. I don't even want it to be unlike Totally Married or like, it's not going to be interactive. This is truly just for our marriage.
Just for us.
Just for us. And
what if we didn't even look to see if anybody was listening? Well, guess what? We probably will look to see if someone's listening. But wouldn't that be interesting if we didn't even know if anyone's listening?
Well, it's like a catch-22 because like my ego needs to know, of course. But also, I really do want this. I don't want to censor myself or like, I don't want it to become about the outside world. I really do want to do this just because I miss what doing the weekly podcast brought us. And also, this is very easy for us. It's not like Totally Lame where we're booking guests. I'm not fielding like questions and I don't know. We're just going to throw it up.
Maybe you shouldn't look at the stats and I'll just, you can ask me once a week, is anybody listening? And I can just say yes or no.
So you'll see the stats?
Maybe.
Okay,
that
that's
seems
funny.
kind of fun. Anyways, let's chat though, because I mean, we're here. I feel like I haven't talked to you in 5 years.
Have we not talked? We've been through a pandemic.
Yeah.
I mean, not through it. We're still in it, I guess, but things are feeling lighter. I will say we've accomplished a lot of our goals in the last 5 years.
Has it been that long since we last were?
I think 4 or 5 years.
Okay.
We bought a cabin.
Check.
Huge goal, checked off the list.
Huge dream. I'd say one of your big dreams.
I'd say outside of having a happy, healthy family and doing what I'm doing in my career, having a cabin is probably the next biggest dream in my entire life.
Wow.
Now, can we be in that cabin?
No. Will we ever be in that cabin? We don't know. It doesn't matter.
We did buy a cabin that we promptly had to completely gut, and then we ran out of money, and now it's just sitting, but we have the shell of a cabin.
We're one step closer to that dream.
Yeah.
Now we can literally smell it whenever we feel like it.
We can smell it.
Yeah.
And it does have a smell.
It does. It's not the best smell, but if we need to smell it, we can. Before we could just envision and dream and imagine, now we can smell it.
I am proud of us.
Me too.
So you had mentioned there were a few things you wanted to talk to me about on this podcast. We're getting back to, we used to have Save It for the Podcast was a regular thing we said to each other throughout our lives, and now we could have that again.
Okay, mine's pretty heavy. You want to just jump right in? Mm-hmm. It's light and heavy.
Okay.
I'll start with the light.
Okay.
So I took our daughter snowboarding for the first time this weekend, which was a blast.
Oh man, another dream come true, right?
Yeah.
That's something I'm sure you have thought about, getting to take your kid
snowboarding. And we do that at our little cabin situation. So we get to the mountain, and we'd never been to our local mountain, but let me tell you, I love it. It's great. And drop our daughter off at the ski school, snowboard school, and I'm like, is there a place where I can look? Because they just kind of whisk the kids away, which I wasn't prepared for. And they said, yeah, there's an observation deck up over there. And I was like, okay, cool. So I go up on the deck. I'm one of the first people up there, and then slowly some of our parents come there. And these two dudes sit down, and let's judge them for a second to paint a picture. They might have voted for Trump, maybe. I don't know. Why do I think that?
Yeah, actually, I'm so well, and we should just because this area is.
There's more Trump flags than Biden flags.
Do you think that's true?
Yeah, for sure.
I don't think so.
Oh, for sure. That's for sure.
But I think that there are more just Biden people. I think that the Trump people maybe are more like vocal and.
Oh, I would say there's more Trump people for sure.
Whoa.
But we'll get to that.
Okay.
But anyways, I'm just making these assumptions, which is not fair, because let's also back up for a minute. The day before, our pipes froze and a guy from the water company came who maybe you might have thought voted for Trump, if we're being honest, if you just saw him walking down the street, right?
Yeah, that's fair.
But could not have been a more lovely, nice guy. Am I right?
And I would say after our interaction with him, we both felt pretty sure he probably voted not for Trump.
Okay, great point. Okay, I would agree with you, but you know what? We could be totally wrong. But table that for a minute, but I agree with you. Okay. But don't judge a book by its cover is what I'm saying. But anyways, I thought these guys might have been maybe voted for Trump. This is like a weird way to set this whole story up. What a
lens also we're viewing the world through. But it's a reality.
It is a reality, and we're making these judgments, and I think there's a lot to learn here, and I think there is a lesson to learn here.
Oh, I'm excited. Okay.
But I'm saying that just because of the clothes and the style of like trucker hat one of these guys was wearing at the snowboard lesson. But anyways, we start chatting, and these dudes were the best. Okay. Couldn't have been cooler. Okay. Instantly love both of these guys. One of them in the like truckery hat, I'm guessing is a friend of the other. And it was the other guy, two of his kids were in the class. So I think they were just buddies. And one was like tagging along for the day while the other kids were at the snowboard lesson. And they go way back. And I think I know how they go back. We'll get to that. But anyways, I'm just chatting. They've experienced some of the things I've experienced lately. Frozen pipes, cabin woes.
No way.
Sure.
Do they live up there full time?
No, but one grew up having a cabin up there. The other has cabins elsewhere right now, has 3 Airbnbs. We're talking about Airbnb. We're just shooting the shit and getting along. One of them has a breakfast burrito I was real envious of. It's just a lovely time. Now, I was snowboarding that day too, so I would kind of be there, and then my plan was to leave for a little bit, take a couple runs, come back, take a couple runs, come back. So that's my plan. So I say goodbye to the guys every time I leave. Be like, I'll check you guys later. I'm going to go take a couple runs. And I come back. And at this point, I overheard a very intense conversation between these two guys.
Okay.
So it sounded like they were genuinely concerned about a friend of theirs.
Oh.
Which I think had some sort of health problems.
Okay.
That's what I deduced. But they're talking about like that willing to fight like when you're sick, right? Just like fighting for your health, fighting for stuff. So that's kind of like what I walked in on. And then I hear this quote from the father. You know, when we got to Iraq,
Oh, boy.
they told us that 50% of us were going to die in combat.
Whoa.
So every single one of us there was going to fight for our life and kill anybody if we had to kill anybody. So that's what I heard.
Jeez.
And I was like, whoa, that's intense. And I yelled out, whoa, Nelly. Actually, I said nothing. I just listened and kind of scooted further to the side so they didn't think I was eavesdropping. But I couldn't stop thinking about it because it's so true what they were saying. And I had hearing them say that, these guys that I formed this rapport with that were like so sweet and so nice. And then hearing like that they literally had this reality where they were sent off to war. And when they got there, were told 50% of you are going to die. And that these guys definitely killed some people, I'm gathering, right? And let alone the baggage that you might carry along from that. But also the baggage that maybe you wouldn't carry along because the fact of the matter was like you would do anything for your own life and to return to your family. It was really intense hearing it so simply put. And like,
I have so many follow-up questions.
Yeah, please. But
okay.
it's just like, it just really struck me as we're so lucky. Like,
yeah.
And,
yeah.
And B, those kind of realities happen to people all the time.
Well, if we lived in the Ukraine right now,
yes,
I would have taken the kids and be crossing the border, and you likely would be staying
to defend
with a gun.
Right. People are standing in line to pick up guns. I'm so heartwarmed by seeing all the people that like instantly were donating blood, the huge lines to donate blood. Like, it's crazy.
It is crazy. I mean, the reality, okay, these are my follow-up questions.
Yes.
One is, I'm curious about the friend. Was the conversation in the sense that the friend's not fighting for himself?
Oh, the one that they were concerned about?
Yeah.
Yes, I think that was one of the points he was trying to make.
You don't need to, do you have a sense of what the health issue? You don't need to.
I don't
know. I didn't know if you're protecting their anonymity by like.
No, well, and shout out if you guys are listening, which again, we don't think anyone's listening.
Nobody's listening.
I couldn't be bigger fans of you two if you know who I'm talking about.
But also, okay, because that is something interesting. I mean, this is more for my other project, but like, the idea of surrendering to death versus fighting to live is a whole other thing. Whoa. And by the way, that's a whole episode of the thing I'm doing.
A nice teaser.
But, my dad went to Vietnam.
Yeah.
2 tours. So he was there for 2 whole years. I think I don't know, but I do know that I think it completely changed his entire everything, his worldview. And in a way, I think for him to continue operating, he shut down all of those thoughts, all of the feelings. He never talked about it. And I think that didn't come out again until my mom was dying. Mm. And I think that, there are Ukrainians right now who are making the choice to go face what feels like certain or at least very likely death. Mm-hmm. Like their kids are leaving. I mean, there are these heartbreaking videos right now of Russian or Ukrainian kids saying, we left my dad who's going to maybe be fighting. These are like lawyers and like, people who have no training, and as women and men. I didn't mean to imply that just men are staying, but I do feel like it's really timely that they're having this conversation. And the idea of you would do anything to keep yourself alive actually kind of conflicts with this Ukrainian thing. Because people have the option right now to leave and keep themselves alive. But they are sacrificing themselves for the greater good.
Yeah.
And I'm so inspired and moved by that. Like, but it's also, you know, do we get this one life? Like, what are we doing with it?
Yeah.
I don't know. It feels that's really intense.
But there is something. There's like a simplicity in the choice that the experience I had just hearing these guys talk, and then maybe what we're seeing with the Ukrainian crisis, which, you know, that crisis has been brewing for a while, but most people seem to think that they never thought that this would escalate like this has.
Yeah.
All these men that are staying, and not just men, but that are like all of a sudden like, shit, I need to go get a machine gun to defend our country.
Mm-hmm.
That, even though the crisis was unfolding, that wasn't really on many people's mind. And yet that choice, I think, is a pretty simple choice for a lot of people over there, which is so crazy to think how quickly a choice like that can become an obvious choice, sort of.
Yeah, well, like a week ago, I don't think that I mean, maybe that choice was percolating, but to then just have to make it. Yeah. By the way, did you know, like, I mean, I'm so curious about the propaganda like Putin is feeding the Russian people.
Yeah.
Justifying this, because it is so unjustifiable. My understanding is it's literally him just wanting to wave around his dick and be like, he's killing children to be able to say, I now have like more land, essentially.
I think, well, yeah, I mean,
I know it's steeped in history and.
Yeah. There's definitely strategic reasons that he clearly wants Ukraine, but it's how he's going about it. It seems no one thought would unfold like this. It's wild. And that he's doing this into
What are the strategic reasons?
One is that Ukraine is not a part of NATO, but has expressed desires to become a part of NATO, which would still be many years off, most people think. Mm-hmm. But just the idea of that they keep becoming more westernized, mm-hmm. and the idea of them eventually becoming a part of NATO is a big threat to Putin.
Okay.
And literally their proximity to Russia. Putin, in one of his like famous speeches the day or two before he announced the invasion, he actually like spelled out how long, you know, a missile from like a nuclear missile from Ukraine would take to get to Russia. Like, it's how close they are. So there's that, and the NATO of it all. There's the fact that he just doesn't like them becoming more westernized, right? Mm-hmm. He also has this historical argument that, you know, technically from many, many, many years back, like, Ukraine should be a part of Russia.
USSR.
They don't deserve to be not a part. And then there's some other bullshit reasons too.
But do you know, like, the leader of the Chechen army, who's like a big Putin ally, said, basically encouraged Putin to take more extreme measures yesterday, I think. And he said, like, the way he said it was like, we need to take measures to defeat these Nazis. Like, the propaganda to the Russians are that they're, which I'm really confused by.
I still don't understand it. There is some history with Ukraine and the Nazis from World War II. I think on both sides of that, on the good and the bad side. I think so. That's complicated, but again, that's like from 70 years ago. But it's like kind of makes absolutely no sense right now. Mm-hmm. And the one article I read that made the most sense of it is almost just like those words. It really is just propaganda and just really signaling that Putin is trying to do a regime change. Like, the Ukrainians aren't Nazis. I mean, their president is Jewish, and his he is like but yeah, I don't know all the clarity on like the historical ties to that at all, but it seems incredibly flimsy and just propaganda.
Did you hear the end of this conversation with these guys?
No, I didn't.
How was their kid at How was their kid at snowboarding?
They did pretty good. This was their second lesson. They were doing pretty good.
How was ours?
Pretty good for first lesson. Great. Yeah.
Okay, well, that's what matters here.
Yeah.
No, but I do think I woke up this morning and I had such a like cognitive dissonance between I was looking on Instagram. There's all this like exciting news for my peers right now. Like Chelsea Devonta's got a development deal. Our friend Mike Smith show Twisted Metal got a series pick. Like all these things I'm like, whoa. And also then this shit is going down in Ukraine. And I feel like we've been living in this place for truly since the podcast ended, like the last 5 years, once we entered Trump land.
Yeah.
I don't think it's a coincidence that we kind of shut things down when we were getting into that, because it just felt like all hands on deck for that. Not that, I mean, I did postcarding, I did door-to-door knocking and stuff like that, but it was just the last 5 years have been so fucking stressful, and it just continues to be in, you know, different ways. And it's almost like I feel like I'm finding ways to compartmentalize and be like, oh, this is an exciting thing, but also like neonatal babies in the Ukraine right now. I mean, there are pictures of mothers with children who are going through cancer treatment in the basements of Ukrainian children's hospitals. Like, can you imagine going through hell in already a pandemic hell? And now, like, I just can't even imagine. And I mean, it speaks to the strength of the human spirit when you're looking at it cup half full. And then it also speaks to like, war is just fucking evil. Although then it's like, you look at Nazi Germany, like we had to engage in war to defeat evil. It's just so complicated and messy. And then we are sitting here on the sidelines eating popcorn, sending our kids to snowboarding lessons. Like, because what else are we going to do?
Right.
We are very lucky. Very, very, very
Super
lucky.
The thing about the killing thing that struck me, and it is timely because of the Ukraine, Russia stuff, but outside of that was just like, I'd never heard someone like so matter-of-factly kind of explain that aspect of it, where like I could put myself in their shoes, being someone that grows up with the idea of like killing someone is like the worst thing that you can do, right? And just being like, oh yeah, I could see why you would be like, yeah, I have to kill people.
Yeah,
It's
well,
intense.
listen, I think that seeing this whole Trump thing, I mean, when you first said that, my first question was, and also I'm very ignorant about like the Iraq war. I don't know anything about anything.
Yeah.
But I do think it takes a lot of like propaganda and a lot of perspective shifting to get people into that place to be able to do what people need to do, whether they need to or not. And I'm like, was the U.S. government, I mean, was it 50% of troops who went over there died? Or is that something they're saying to get people to get to that place where they're like, oh yeah, I will do absolutely anything.
Oh yeah. Who knows? Yeah. I think that, yeah, who knows? We don't know.
I mean, and also that's another thing, like you don't really know how you would respond until you were in that moment. I think I would not be able to kill someone unless they were hurting my children or you.
Oh, but I also think if you were in a situation where I think there's probably more context. It feels weird to even bring up these contexts with what's going on in the world right now.
Yeah. You're right.
But yeah.
Well, what I wanted to say about the Trump thing, by the way.
Oh, yeah. I'm glad we're circling back because I had something on the Trump thing of it all, too.
You know, when I did go down to Orange County knocking door to door a couple years ago, it was really very fascinating. And I'd say this is kind of true to my experience also growing up in a really conservative area where I'd say where I'm from, probably the majority of people were Republicans. I hope the landscape has changed somewhat with Trumpism because people in this part of St. Louis also consider themselves to be like refined and sophisticated. And, you know, I think that there's probably a lot of division amongst like quote unquote old school Republicans, which now I have the perspective of looking back on like Reaganism and the racism that has proliferated Republicanism and the Democrat side of things too. Like that's the one thing we share in common. But like I definitely shot out of high school a Republican. Mm-hmm. Because I associated it with these like family values and like good old fashioned, like, you know, without realizing what that really meant. I also had like Catholic ingrained homophobia, which, you know, all of these things I'm really ashamed of, but it's just what I kind of arrived out of high school with. Not that I was actively homophobic. I knew gay people, and in my mind, I was like, that's okay for them. But I don't know. It's one of those things that like, it wasn't until my friends were coming out that I actually had to look at my beliefs and realize how fucking hypocritical and awful so much of like the Republican belief system is intertwined with religion. Mm-hmm. And anyway, this is a long way of saying, when I did door to door, the Republicans were so warm.
Yeah.
Come on in. We're having a party. It was like, oh, this pool is heated and I'd like to is comfortable here. Yeah. And they're friendly and they're welcoming. Whereas Democrat, and I was so anxious doing this, which is shocking because I usually feel like I'm a people person, but I was looking around at like other people and how comfortable they seemed knocking on people's doors. And I was like, it was one of the most anxiety inducing things I've ever done.
Yeah.
And Democrats were like, not warm, kind of rude. If they talked to us at all, like very, suspicious.
Yeah.
Which I understand.
That's how I am when anyone knocks on my door.
That's how we are.
That's super suspicious and edgy.
We are.
Yeah.
So what's that all about? I mean, is it about like putting on airs and this, I mean, certain things are valued in Republicanism, which I think has changed in many ways. Like Trumpism, I don't think that certainly being polite and social etiquette is not valued the same way. Like but I don't know. It's really interesting. And it kind of goes to show like the don't judge a book by its cover.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing is like these guys at the mountain or the water guy that we met, like I could hang out with these guys and have dinner with them. No problem. But then you throw in this context of how divisive things have gotten in the last 4 to 6 years and polarizing. And, you know, we've heard people tell stories in this where our cabin is of it, like it kind of ripped this little town apart, you know, where that had never been politics had never been an issue like that before in this little town.
Right. And
which is interesting. And in some ways it's good because it's bringing to light a lot of problems that exist. But in some ways I think it's not as productive in some ways because people aren't having as many dinners with other people as they used to, you know?
I know, it's just really hard. I mean, it kind of goes what we're talking about with like war and propaganda. I mean, nobody's listening, so it's just us talking. I feel like Trump people are fucking brainwashed. Like, I don't understand how you can see Trump right now saying Putin's a smart guy and he respects him and not realize like you are getting duped by this total fucking Yahoo who is a scam artist. Like, I really feel that Trump is just a scam artist and anything he does is just for self-serving. He has no morals, no ethics. It makes me sad for the people. And I know that that's really disrespectful, pitying someone for their, but then like going through the pandemic, did you know that? So right now, computer whizzes I'm going to sound so...
Hackers?
No, I'm going to sound so stupid, but people who do computer analytics can see like the trend in chat online about things like myocarditis, which is the heart issue that I feel like anti-vaxxers and anti-maskers and anti-people who think the virus is like a hoax. The two things that they've been clinging to for like the last year are myocarditis and how it's this heart condition that can happen after the vaccine or I don't know. And which is false. Like whatever that issue is happens way more often after getting the virus. And the second one is the ivermectin.
Yeah.
And there were like 5 topics like in that realm of the disinformation spread happening that in the last week has gone from being like still moderately active in those circles to absolutely zero because 90% of the disinformation was driven by Russian bots.
Oh, that's crazy.
That have now switched over to...
Wow.
So...
Good on you, Russian. You're so crafty with the cyber shit.
Good
Jesus
on you.
Christ.
I mean, it's cost like millions of lives. It's
don't you wonder? It's so okay. So let's be patriotic for a quick second here.
I love it.
What are we doing to Russia right now on that cyber front? Like because there's no way we're not fucking with them with the amount of fuckery they've been doing to us.
Anonymous, I think, hacked a bunch of sites and put photos of the death and destruction that has happened to Russian soldiers because of this.
Okay.
I also think I read something about like the way to fix this problem, which is not a short-term solution. So I guess it's not, but the real way is for the United States to put tons of money into finding green energy options because the biggest thing that we rely on with Russia is oil and gas. And if we can not need that from them, it would change the game. And if other European countries did not need that from Russia, like if we rendered the need for gas and oil obsolete from Russia, which we could do had we invested in green energy. And this is like, Trump just fucked everything. I mean, I feel like looking back, I would say I hated everything he did. But I thought like, well, he's getting along with Putin and like us getting along is good. And now I'm like, oh my fucking God. It's upsetting. Let's switch gears though. We don't need to keep doing this to ourselves.
Yeah.
What was the other thing you were going to say?
About what?
About, you said something, you had something else. You were like, I'm glad you're circling back to the...
Oh, no, I already said it. I just want to talk about like how, I don't know, just not judging a book by its cover. It's a shame how divisive the country has gotten because, some of these people that will label on a different, have different ideals and morals than us are like pretty cool. Like,
yeah, it's good to have differences, obviously, and to be able to come together. But right now it just feels so toxic. I wish the differences were not steeped in, it's hard to come together when your friend is in a cult who believes that the earth is flat. It's tough.
Okay, I got. This is like really heavy. Do you want another heavy topic? It's adjacent, but it's less political, but it is morally adjacent.
Is it your sunburn?
No, we can talk about that if you
want. What's the morally adjacent?
Okay, we don't have to spend too much time on this.
Okay.
What time is it? Is this ridiculous? You're gonna be like, why did you bring this up? Okay. There's some I saw something unfold on Twitter, like in like on the technology side of stuff in this community. and is really interesting. There was a guy who's had some past tweets were uncovered, and they were like very homophobic, and what else? Definitely some like abortion stuff in there. All leading back to this guy being like a super religious guy, right?
Yeah.
And when all these things came out, he got canceled. He got fired from the technology company. Mm-hmm. But he was, and I am completely on the side of fuck this guy. Let me preface all of this.
Yeah.
Fuck this guy. I don't subscribe to any of his views whatsoever. But he was like, did you guys just notice the first word of my Twitter bio just now that I've had here for the past 10 years? And it was basically, it said Christian, period. And then like something, and then like into tech or whatever. And he went on this big argument of like, why am I getting canceled because I'm a Christian? Which I did think was slightly interesting, although fuck this guy and fuck your views. But is it also a little wrong of me to be like, fuck Christian people? This is a big bag of worms. I know. I know. But it was just one of the most interesting responses I'd ever seen. Someone that was like, hey, I never said I wasn't this guy. You're trying to cancel me for a thing that, guess what? I'm Christian.
It's very telling.
This is what I believe in.
It is very telling that someone would say, did you not notice I'm Christian? And essentially is saying, did you not notice I'm openly homophobic and, you know, Islamophobic and whatever else, you know?
Yeah.
This is very complicated.
But isn't it interesting? Because, okay, let me bring up one thing and then respond. Let's just say you're not openly against gay people, abortion, all this stuff. Let's just say I'm just Christian, or like I go to the cool Christian church. I like the music, and like this is the first time I found a community of people like that share my values. But isn't it like, but guess what? Some of your values are fucked. Why aren't we just honking our horn when we drive past the cool hipster Christian church being like, fuck you guys?
Well, I kind of do feel that way in some ways. I'm not going to lie, because of my experience with Catholicism.
Sure.
And now I look at Catholicism and I think it's evil. This is a corporation that funded pedophilia.
Okay, yes, absolutely.
And so I feel betrayed by it. Not only that, it also instilled the ingrained homophobia I was talking about, which I just want to clarify. I never would have considered myself homophobic. Oh, speaking of abortion, I also would not have considered myself pro-life, but I feel like my view on both of those things were always like, it's not for me, which is not
yeah.
Right. You know, and so now that I feel like I have clarity but I still like when I go back to St. Louis in a few months, I'm going to go probably to my old church, and it's going to give me like, it's this weird thing where I love a mass, and there's something, it's very complicated, but I also wonder how people can remain in a church donating money to this, that, and the other when they know what has gone on there. And people, I guess, want to find new churches and be like, this isn't that stuff, like what you're saying.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, Christianity, I mean, like Marjorie Taylor Greene, that lady, you know, she was just at a white nationalist event similar to your guy you're talking about. Her defense is, I'm Christian.
Yeah.
Of course I'm there. And I feel like you can't just take the parts that you want. I guess you can, but when you are associating with a corporation, that you look at, I mean, the way the pendulum has swung for me right now, my blood fucking boils when I see the legislation being passed all over this country right this very moment to criminalize transgender and non-binary children.
Yeah.
Like it is an absolute atrocity, and it is completely being driven by this Christian thesis. And so to answer your question, I don't hate all Christians.
Yeah.
But I judge them. And if I were talking to some guys who then brought up their church, I have family members I love very much who their connection with Jesus Christ, our Lord and Savior, is like their very identity. Mm-hmm. And I know that they're good people.
A lot of people that are very religious are great people, right? Here's the problem. Let's try to take politics out of it for a second and just look at, like, all right, there's a job interview. You're up for a job, and then there's this other lady up for the same job. But she goes to church and is active in the church and thinks that if you're gay, you're going to hell. Okay? I'm trying to figure out a way to make this, what's something about you that's not great?
Oh, let me list the ways. I'm judgmental.
But I think the point that I'm not trying to defend the Christian lady, but it is interesting that, like, when you talk to that Christian lady, and we're not talking about Marjorie Taylor Greene. We're talking about just like someone that grew up in this Sue Smith that doesn't know better. Just grew up in this world, right? Yeah. And couldn't be more innocent in her ignorance, which is probably a judgmental thing for me to say, because she's looking at us and going, "Oh, honey. Oh, honey."
Yeah, you like, poor.
You guys are going to hell.
Well, okay, so this is actually the point, though.
Okay.
You just got to, like, let's boil it down to the most simplistic thing.
Yeah.
There are people I follow on Instagram who are Christians who are very deep into it, but also, like, associate with liberal people and seem open-minded. And at its core, the thing I can't get past is you think that if you are not Christian and have not been baptized or whatever, you're going to hell. People are going to hell.
Mm. It's just not a nice idea.
Well, so you think just by luck, so you believe in a God, then you also believe in a God who kind of picks where people are going when they're born, what souls go where. So a Muslim child who was born to a family is going to hell because God damned that child to go to hell.
But isn't, in theory, if you saw that child, you could baptize them and get them into heaven?
I guess
like that, the audacity that you think that you could actually do that.
Well, that's also it. I'm like,
and that would get them into heaven is
self-righteous. So it's a lie upon a lie to believe that you already were pre-chosen by God to get to go to heaven, and that, you know, out of however many billions of people in the world who aren't Christian, just by virtue of God picking who they were born to and in what area and to what culture and whatever, aren't getting to go to heaven, is the most narcissistic fucking idea. And also, you're loving and worshiping and thinking you have this special relationship with this. Also, I have such an issue. It's all so patriarchal. This Father above who is abusing all of the rest of the world because he chose for them to not get to have the thing that you're getting.
But Jesus did some awesome stuff too.
Well, I mean, we're getting into territory of, like, how is it that Christians are the least Jesus-like, have been, I'd say the Christian right in this country, the hate that they're picking. I mean, transgender kids is like this perfect example.
Yeah.
They're the least Christian-like people when in terms of being Christ-like.
There's a hypocrisy.
Jesus by the way, and their whole thing is transgender. God doesn't make a mistake. I mean, that goes back to because God picked me to go to heaven and he didn't pick. I agree if there is, I don't believe in the same God that they believe in. I do believe in God. Mm-hmm. I think it's more of a mother energy. I think it's an energy.
Of course you do.
I think it's an energy we all share in. But, or actually, I think it's a non-binary energy. I actually truly do believe that. I think it's more of an energy and love. I think it's non-binary. Eking towards the side of being motherly. But listen, I don't think that loving energy does make mistakes. I think that, and you know, we've had experience with trans kids now and non-binary kids. And the kids that I have met have something in common, which is when they are supported and loved by their community, there is something very special about these kids that are able to know who they are in a way that is inspiring. Mm-hmm. And also it breaks down a system of hate. I'm talking about when kids are supported and loved for who they are, it reverberates outward so that the rest of us, I mean, it's a reminder for me to love each other for our differences, to not judge people, like to appreciate people for who they are. And I know that's really probably sounds hypocritical since I've just been condemning like
it gets dicey.
All Christians.
It does get dicey.
But listen, I think that these kids who come here who are transgender kids right now, it's not a mistake. They are here to teach us things.
Sure.
And I actually think that in 50 years, like the binary is going to be so archaic, at least in our bubbles. Mm-hmm. I think it will take time to reach the others. But the same way, like gay people right now, and I can't speak for someone who's in like West Virginia, small town, red, like maybe they feel the same way that they
did. Red hair, you mean?
Huh?
Red hair?
Red hair, yes. Redheads. I don't know. I just think that the hate right now that is coming from the religious right is a tough pill to swallow. And I don't understand how you can listen to scripture about Jesus. I also don't understand how you can believe in a God that you think would damn millions of souls just by virtue of where this God is picking that they go.
And also, isn't it fucking boring? Like it's all about the same guy, the same book over and over. And
it's a hateful God. I mean, if you think about it, I think this is why they love Trump so much. It's a withholding, hateful God. And I know that people, if anyone was listening and they heard this and they were a Christian, they'd be like, no, you don't get it. This is the most loving God. I'm like, you don't get to have a God that only loves you and is condemning the soul that they sent to the Muslim family to hell. That's a hateful God. I'm sorry. And I don't believe in that. I think that God is love and is non-binary with a slight lean towards femme.
I mean, it's also like, I get weary of people that put so much energy into like one club. You know what I mean? Like, like what's up with CrossFit people?
Yes. Okay. Well, let's talk about CrossFit.
Like, who else can we alienate today? Wait, well, nobody's listening. Nobody's listening. And on that note,
I did want to say, I think no one's listening. We're popping this on our old RSS feed, but the way I want you to track who's listening, I don't want you to look at stats.
Why not?
I want you just to look at our iTunes reviews.
Oh, no, you're so self-serving. Look at you. That is loaded.
No, but how are you? You don't even have access to the stats.
Oh, that's true.
I want you to gauge it from the reviews.
No, it seems a little. I mean, if you're asking for reviews right now, they're going to get real there's going to be a lot of anger probably, don't you think?
But that's the thing. That's kind of the beauty of this.
Tell me about that.
Do we care? Now, on my other podcast project, I am going to care very much. And I'm going to actually, the podcast will rely on interaction and support from listeners. This is like our little thing.
Okay.
And I want this to go through our whole marriage. Today, we've covered war.
We got a little too political today.
But no, we didn't. This would be the conversation we're having.
Yeah.
This is a conversation we had.
And yet we would never, I'd probably not dive in this long on it. Do you know what I mean? Like I'd probably just like roll over and fall asleep.
That makes it sound like this is a conversation we had while we were having sex.
Oh, no, I thought I meant just like laying in bed.
Oh, okay.
This is not sexy talk for me.
But what I wanted to say was we didn't talk about your sunburn.
Oh, yeah. What do you want to say about it? What's the big deal? I got a really bad sunburn on my face. I made a mistake. I regret it. Case closed.
We're going to talk about this next week.
No, we're not. That'll be old news.
Okay, well, I just do want to say, we have a history with you and sunburns.
We?
A dark history. Yes, we. You got one of the world's worst facial sunburns the day before our wedding.
Yeah.
And
so embarrassing.
It is embarrassing. And I do want to say, and I hope you'll back me on this.
Yeah.
I handled it pretty gracefully.
Yeah, you did.
I'd say a lot of brides
would have freaked out.
Might have been upset.
Were you upset?
I mean, it wasn't ideal.
But were you bitching about it to anybody? Like, of course he got a fucking sunburn. He's so fucking irresponsible. But God, is he kind of cute.
Oh boy. Oh boy, I want to hear where that goes. I'm guessing it was a topic of discussion amongst our wedding guests.
I'm guessing some of the older people, and there weren't that many older people there, were just thinking, oh God.
I don't think it was just older people. Like, listen, it wasn't just your whole face is burned, right? Like it is now, where there's a uniform.
There were big white splotches where I did put suntan lotion
where
on.
you could see the fingerprints of where you put the sun. But listen, so that happened. And then, a year ago, you got quite a bad sunburn where you also could see the fingerprints on your back, where you very, very sloppily just put a little bit on your lower back, and you can see clearly the handprints of white in the sea of deep red. Now you come home this weekend it's much better today, but you looked like a lobster. Like, it was so red, and I had to laugh, and you seemed genuinely upset about it. Like, our kid brought it up, and you kind of snapped at them because...
I know what I did wrong. I don't need to... You guys keep bringing it up over and over and over again.
It's something we have to look at and endure. And I feel like from the wedding... the grace I carried with me through the wedding, mm-hmm. I have earned the right to...
Oh, you can go fuck yourself. Hey, on that note, though, I'm thinking about your iTunes thing. Wouldn't it maybe nice if just people said simply, I'm listening, period?
Yes.
Like, I can't imagine a better iTunes comment than just like, I'm listening.
I love it. So this is going to go up on Totally Married's feed, Toot Sweet, and we're not...
What?
Right now, like right away.
What'd you say?
Toot Sweet.
Toot Sweet?
It's French for right now. You want to bag on French right now? So it's Toot the Sweet.
Okay.
So, nice save. So, I don't know about artwork. I don't know about... I'm going to change, I guess, this is all... The listeners the no listeners don't need to hear this. But anyway.
Yeah, you can save the minutia for yourself.
Yeah. Andy, I love you. I'm excited to be back in the saddle with you.
This was fun.
It was delightful.
I feel bad that it got so political, but it's good.
Why do you feel bad?
You know what? Maybe I don't.
This is what we would talk about.
I know, and it actually feels great to just chat with you about this stuff.
And we also don't need to censor ourselves in the way of like, clearly, you've just offended a great swath of people.
Yeah, that's true.
So, it's all good.
It is good.
I love you.
Love you. I'll check you later.
Check you later.